Welcome to Energy Vista, a podcast on energy issues. I'm your host, Leslie Palti-Guzman. In each episode of this podcast, we will chat with energy experts from all around the world. They will tell us about their passion, inspiration, and aspiration. It's February 1st, 2019, and time for a new Energy Vista episode. Today, I'm exchanging with Isuru Seneviratne. Hi, Isuru.
Hi, Leslie.
So Isuru is an energy professional, entrepreneur, and investor, and he analyzes and works on energy systems from an investment perspective. He's also an engaged citizen for climate policy and action, and this is what we're going to focus on today, about his engagement and why it's important and what each of us can do about it. So Isuru, you mentioned to me recently that what you're the most passionate about those days is climate action. You know a lot about energy and different energies, different fuels, nuclear, hydro. But what takes most of your time or preoccupies you the most those days is climate action. So tell us a little bit about, in terms of policies, you've been following closely the bipartisan bill to charge fossil fuel companies a tax for their carbon dioxide emissions. And so why this bill is a kind of a milestone? Is it just because it's bipartisan, or also because it's raising a carbon tax, like a higher profile for carbon tax in the US?
Well, I'd say both. The Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act was introduced in the House and the Senate in a bipartisan way end of last year. That was the last Congress, and it was just reintroduced a couple of days ago in the House in a bipartisan manner. Yeah, I'd say two things. One is it's effective. Like if enacted, this would cut carbon greenhouse gas emissions down by 40% in 12 years and 90% in by 2050. So so obviously it's important because of that, and it's also important to have to overcome the partisan barriers to climate. I mean, we all live in the same planet. It's not a red planet or a blue planet. Having bipartisanship is important, we think, for lasting solutions that doesn't get kicked around with the political cycles.
Right. And there is the idea also maybe that if the US is introducing this kind of bill, it can also incentivize other countries to follow the same path. I mean, there has been globally different trial and errors where countries had introduced a carbon tax and removed it, tried again, and depending on the political cycle, exactly what you were mentioning, then it's disappearing from the agenda, or it seems that it's hard to put in place.
Yeah, and it is a challenge on how to, because this is a global challenge. I'd say it's the ultimate tragedy of the commons, right? It's the air that we breathe as people, not just today, but also generations to come. So how do we solve this kind of challenge? And it's not a simple issue. I mean, people solve this for the ozone layer, the chemicals that were depleting the ozone layer. That was identified as a big problem and then quickly solved because the cost of alternates were visibly, readily apparent and easily distributed throughout the world. Whereas for carbon dioxide, which is majority of the global energy comes from fossil fuels, you have to have systemic change throughout the economy, not just in the US, but other countries. So, so I'd say you're right. Like the cap and trade was the effort to curb mostly in the European countries and regionally in the US. That has been attempted, but cap and trade, it's a little hard to incorporate a border, the cross-country pollination of this idea with the cap and trade. Cap and trade is very difficult. It's a expensive and process intensive matter to implement it, and especially in poorer countries, it's hard to enforce it. Whereas with a carbon fee, a direct carbon price that you put on the fossil fuels, you could do it at the source. So there's only a certain number of oil wells and coal mines and the ports that bring in energy or products that's made with energy and services into the country. So there's only a limited number of places that you can go and regulate. You can put the price at that point, and then it trickles up through the economy to our everyday, fruits and vegetables, and obviously gasoline price.
Yeah. So why is the consensus so skeptical about the odds of success of establishing a carbon price in the U.S.?
I'd say I hope that's not the case. Well, I don't know if you saw the 70-some economists wrote an op-ed in the journal last week, like Nobel laureates and central bank, federal leaders, and policy people. I think the consensus is coming around to this as a potential solution. But I think on the whole, people don't understand the transformative nature of a dividend. I mean, different methods, different things have been tried in all parts of the world, but there has never been a federal or a country level carbon dividend attempted. And I think that's the piece that I want to emphasize to my neighbors and friends and kind of businesses in my neighborhood or whoever else that I can engage on this subject, is to really try to understand what the dividend does to the economy. Because as opposed to every other measure where you kind of say, hey, you have to put a solar panel on your roof. I mean, that's a cost to me. Or you say you have to now pay a higher price on your gasoline, is what Macron did in France.
Yes.
That's a cost to me. Yes, I care about climate. Yes, I care about the climate refugees that are coming to the border. Or yes, I care about, the national security challenges and like all these things that are happening because of climate change. But I care more about, my kids' future. Like, how do I send them to college, or how do I don't want to sacrifice my well-being for the climate for the most part. So I think that
you want to. I mean, it's what some French people have been saying. They want to know how they end the month rather than knowing how they will end the next 20, 40, 50 years.
Right. I mean, and a lot of people are struggling, right? I mean, the unemployment rate in the U.S. is at historic lows or very good levels, but there are so many people that are struggling, kind of living month to month, working 2 jobs, whatever. There's no doubt that there has been a big shift of wealth from the lower middle classes to a concentrated, highly concentrated. So there's a lot of anger and skepticism at kind of elitist efforts to curb carbon or curb pollution in some way that might help other people in other parts of the world 30 years from now. Mm-hmm. But if you get a dividend in the door, that makes it personal. I get a monthly dividend. I can decide whether I can use it to upgrade my fridge, or buy more beer or beef. What I get to choose.
Right.
And the really key thing here is Treasury Department analysis had showed that 7 out of 10 households get more in dividends than the increased cost of all goods and services that now incorporate the cost of pollution. So that is as a starting point. If you're in the outskirts of Paris, you have to drive longer to get to work. It completely turns the debate on its head. Carbon or climate change has been a cost to me, or the climate change solutions have been a cost to me, or have been thought of as a cost to me. But now you can think of it as a benefit. So you can get paid while society cuts its carbon emissions.
Yeah, very interesting. So that's, if you can explain also our listeners that are not that familiar with all the different terminology. So there is carbon price, carbon tax, carbon fee, carbon dividends. Can you make sense of all of that for us?
Sure. So price on carbon is, economists have long agreed or acknowledged that to curb use of anything, you increase its price, and that's there's no doubt about that. The When you put a price on something, you create a pot of money. That fee that you charge, or that price that you charge on that carbon, is collected by somebody, and now there's this bunch of money sitting somewhere. So what to do with that is the question. If it's used as a traditional tax, the government gets to decide what to do with it. Government could, pay Medicare, Medicaid, or hurricane assistance, or go to war using it, or invest in green energy projects. Whatever it is, it grows the government. So that goes into the government coffer. That's something that conservatives and Republicans have been against. And that's one of the big reasons that there hasn't been a consensus solution on this. However, if you say we are using it for this specific purpose, you collect the money and you distribute it equally to all households, it's a fee, much like if you generate a bunch of trash, you ask the municipal council to come and take it away, you pay for that service. You create twice the trash, you pay twice the fee. So similarly for carbon, it's a pollutant. The reason people don't, or one of the reasons that this has escaped attention for so long is it's a odorless, colorless gas. So it kind of out of sight, out of mind. You don't see it, you don't feel it, you can ignore it.
Well, and until, I mean, if you live in New Delhi or Shanghai those days and you have a lot of fog on the morning when you wake up, you kind of see it, acknowledge it.
True, and the particulate matter is another issue. It's related, obviously,
right?
And I think cities, so in Shanghai or Beijing, they've given these green license plates for electric cars so that they could drive those cars every day of the week. Whereas on a fossil fuel car, you can only drive it on an odd or even day, and that's mostly driven by a local air pollution, not
right.
global warming concerns.
Right, but I think like in the in common people's mind, they kind of relate both, and air pollution, has an impact on your daily life, whether it's asthma or other kind of health related problems. And I was seeing reading a poll recently saying that about 7 in 10 Americans are at least somewhat worried about global warming.
Oh yeah,
and I think it's all those related issues that make you feel that there is a growing concern, and trying to find ways on how to address it. So we mentioned one way, which is at the political level and bipartisan and with a dividend. There is also a lot of talk those days about a Green New Deal, also at the policy level, with the Democrats now having the majority in the House.
Yeah. No,
yeah. So do you think definitely it seems that global warming, climate change will have more space in public action in the next few years because of the Democrats having the majority in the House now?
I think the Green New Deal, the Sunrise Democrats, and increasingly groups like Extinction Rebellion, they're elevating the subject, right? They've done a great work to bring this subject from, it's too difficult, we can't deal with it, kind of kicking the can down the line, to raising the profile and making it a top priority. So I think we share the urgency with the Green New Deal. And And I think that's very complement our so Energy Innovation Carbon Dividend Act is very complementary to a Green New Deal. I mean, the original New Deal itself had multiple programs that ran for different periods of time. Social Security Administration, which has run for 100 years and hopefully run for a lot longer, came out of the original New Deal. So I think of carbon dividends as could be a key plank in the Green New Deal, as that's something that shift the economy away from pollution while protecting the lower end middle class folk. I mean, I think one of the things that's again misunderstood about this bill is that carbon fees is it'll kill lots of jobs, but on the contrary, when you do so the
and that's a very interesting point to raise with the current administration, which is very focused on jobs.
Oh yeah, I mean, and like so as I'm part of this group called Citizens Climate Lobby. We go to Washington D.C. twice a year to talk to our representatives, and this is people from all walks of life. Not energy wonks or policy people, but farmers or consultants or whoever. And when we go talk to these Congress people's offices, a lot of people, jobs is a perennial concern for people. And if somebody is representing a certain group of people, what's most important to that people is to have a means to pay for their daily sustenance. So jobs is a perennial concern. So Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividends Act would actually grow net increase of 2 million jobs in under 10 years and almost 3 million jobs in 20 years.
And those jobs would be on which sectors or?
That's a really good question, because there's a sense by a lot of people, if we transition to a green economy, everybody wants, if you want to be a part of that future, I'd have to become a solar person or a wind person or like learn something new. I can't be part of that future, so I'm going to defend the status quo.
The old jobs, yeah.
The dividend again transforms this discussion on its head. If you think about it, like when somebody who's a single mom or a poor person, when they get that dividend, they can now use that money to pay for their kids' medicine or to get kind of childcare while they go to work. Or 70% of the U.S. economy is consumption. So if you think about when you give people money, where does that go? That goes into consumption, which means this will grow jobs in the hospitality industry. It'll grow jobs in the food and beverages industry. It'll grow jobs in the construction industry. So it's not just those engineers who are solar engineers that get the jobs. This is a transformation across the economy. And I think that's a really powerful message that I don't think has been told. Canada is trying to do this. So Trudeau introduced a revenue neutral carbon tax on the provinces that doesn't already have a carbon pricing mechanism in place. So this is the biggest, I guess, national level effort, semi-national level effort at a carbon dividend. And that's commendable. I think I would like to see Trudeau better express the benefits to all people and the transformation of the economy, because they are getting attacked by the Doug Fords of the world.
So I wanted to ask you also, so one way is the policy way, the other way is in terms of investments, how you can guide investors to do green investment, which means less investment in fossil fuel and more investments in renewable. Does that have an impact, and how successful is it?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Investments in, say, wind and solar have become so economic now that in places where you don't already have a big fossil fuel infrastructure, say India or Africa, incrementally, it's much cheaper to build a solar-based electricity versus building natural gas-based or coal-based electricity. So that's very encouraging. What this would do is it would accelerate that transition. So rather than holding on to your coal plant for 20 years in the US, you'll shut it down in 5 or 10 years. So how, I don't know the numbers exactly, but depends on the specific asset. But so one thing that we didn't touch on is a carbon fee plan that's proposed is a steadily rising fee on carbon. So it's $10 or $15 a ton in the first year, $25 the next year, $35 the year after, 45, etc. So you have this steadily rising cost of pollution that the companies, when they look at this policy environment, will say, okay, it's economic for me to keep this coal plant running for the next 2 years, but then it's not in the 5 years after. So now there's an incentive for that same company, be it a big oil or a big electricity or a small entrepreneur starting his wind farm. It incentivizes everybody across the economy to make that transition faster. I mean, one of the things that has been proposed, I mean, this is a federally guaranteed income stream, much like Alaskans have in Alaska from the permanent dividend fund. So you could use that income stream, go to the bank and show that government said this is going to pay this. You can get a loan against it. So you could, buy that fridge sooner, or you could buy an electric car sooner, or whatever it is that you want to do. You can make that investment sooner. I mean, that's the problem is, I think that the technology has gotten so far so fast. I mean, wind and solar costs have come down 90+% over the last 10 years. Lithium-ion battery costs are coming down at 19% per annum. But battery costs are still high, right? It's still too high. But if you kind of incent everybody across the board, because I don't know, it might be lithium-ion tomorrow, it might be something else the day after. But this solution would elevate all solution providers.
Okay. So let me ask you also about divestment from fossil fuels. That seems to be a higher level of activism and a different strategy. Whether it's, the World Bank saying that they won't invest in upstream oil and gas, or the city mayor of New York trying to redirect the money from the city towards more only green fuels. Does that, or just clearly private investors, equity, and so on, what kind of impact does it have? And can we see some kind of unintended consequences from this strategy?
There's definitely a lot of people have put in a lot of work into the divestment effort, and it does help to kind of elevate the subject again. If you're a university, everybody starts talking about it, then everybody starts thinking about the next steps and so on and so forth. But I just read this study by the Political Economy Research Institute at UMass that came out in April 2018, so pretty recent. And they claim it's the most comprehensive evaluation of divestment campaigns and its impact. And they tally everything up. I mean, what's the dollars and cents here? There's $11.3 billion in funds that have committed to fight full divestment of fossil fuel interest, and that's
globally.
Yeah, that's 0.2% of the $4.9 trillion total fossil fuel market. So it's 0.2%. So
it's very small.
And that's for full divestment. There's $36 billion total commitments for including partial divestments, and that's 0.7%. So it has elevated the subject, and it can lead to other things, but it by itself just doesn't compare, because if other buyers who will take up that space, that this is not going to make a meaningful impact in the time frame that's required. So what these guys who did this study said was that those efforts that people are putting into this are better spent on putting a price on carbon, like promote putting a price on carbon, subsidize clean energy investments. So back to the technology, green investment side, kind of incentivize more innovation, or specific goals like energy efficiency, or you actually make the investment to cut your carbon emissions to 0%.
Right.
So like what the Googles and the Facebooks have done, they say we are going to cut our emissions, or we are going to offset our emissions to a certain level.
Yeah. I have two problems with divestment. One is that they don't really make any nuance between fossil fuels. So all fossil fuels are equal, while they don't necessarily pollute the same way. And second, there is a kind of a moral problem, which is we're making decisions in New York City and London about divestment of investments, export facilities of oil and gas that could deprive emerging markets, poor countries from electricity down the road. Or we could slow down their access to electricity to some extent. Not always, but there are some cases that can be made.
No, for sure. I think there's multiple studies that show how access to electricity is the most reliable measure of a human development index, improvements in human development. So you track your per capita electricity consumption versus the HDI, and it's a striking straight line there.
Yeah.
So I think I also have the same problem. I guess both of us have been involved in the energy sector, fossil fuel sector for a long time. I think they all have a place in this, in coming up with solutions. Two things again about the divestments. Like a lot of people are now saying, if you remain investors, maybe you have a voice as a shareholder to move these companies to solutions development. And the other thing is, and they have done. So Shell, for instance, is more of a natural gas company now. Equinor, as you know, changed their name because they used to be Statoil Hydro, to reflect that they are one of the biggest providers of wind
and most of them have shifted their portfolio less geared towards oil and more towards gas.
Not as much as I would like them to have, but they are. I think, and it's a process. As the economics of the renewables get better and better, you're going to see more and more of that. I think Shell is at the forefront of this.
Yeah,
like
Shell
they want to
sure,
become
yeah.
a electricity company as opposed to a oil and gas company. So, and that electricity can come from wind and solar and whatever else. I'd like to see them make huge investments in batteries, because I think or energy storage in general. And they are. So I don't know if you follow the Hydrogen Council, comprises of Shell has been a big proponent of that, but Air Liquide and like these big industrial companies are looking at alternate forms of energy storage that can incorporate more and more of the renewables.
Yeah. Well, very interesting. So we're now turning to our second and third section of the program, which is personal and professional trajectory. So I've learned that you recently become an American citizen. So congratulations.
Thank you.
You're originally from Sri Lanka, and you decided. So how long ago did you decide to become an engaged citizen, and you belong to this citizen climate lobby? So you're volunteering for them. You're going sometimes to Washington DC. You were mentioning what's can you tell us what does it mean to be engaged, and what do you do exactly?
Well, you don't have to be a citizen to become member of Citizens Climate Lobby. I'll put it out there first.
Yeah, I didn't want to make the direct connection, but what I meant is that
No, but no, I definitely
you can live in New York, you can live in the US without being engaged, but you made the choice to be engaged.
yeah, I think having kids kind of focuses your mind, so to speak. Like, what's the world that we leave them? I think that's been a key driver for me. And I think the emergence of a bipartisan solution, and that's what's been said is a capitalist solution for climate change, I think made me see that there is a path forward that a informed person can get behind. But personally, as a citizen, becoming a citizen definitely had an impact on me, because now I can actually vote. I mean, I've lived in this country since 2000, but this last November was my first time to impact who should be running it and how.
Mm-hmm.
So that's and it's I think, I mean, one of the things that I've come to realize is in my engagement in this kind of work is democracy does work if you can make the business case for it.
Mm-hmm.
So people crying out for equal rights for different skin colored people, or for based on gender, or for based on your sexual preferences. Like, you got to make the business case for it. Like, you're gonna run into resistance if you don't make the business case for it, because the businesses, the status quo is always gonna prevent change through political contributions.
Mm-hmm.
So I think being able to make a strong business case for climate action has empowered me to kind of spread that to my friends and neighbors and beyond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, congratulations. That's a great adventure, I'm sure, and keeps you very busy.
Always.
So you originally came from Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka is one of the most vulnerable countries because of climate change right now. What did that contribute to your engagement?
For sure. Sri Lanka, Maldives, Bangladesh. I mean, these are countries with a large with very high population density, and a large percentage of those people living in coastal areas. So just a few inch sea level rise, let alone the multiple feet that we are looking at today, is going to change things dramatically. You're going to have people from the coastal areas they have no choice but to move to higher ground.
Migrate. Mm-hmm.
Higher ground in country, but also to other countries. So there's going to be conflict within those countries, and there's going to be conflict at the border, as we are seeing in Europe and the US, when there's mass migration that's going to happen due to where they used to live become uninhabitable. Even in the last 2 years, we've seen, when you see 1 in 100 kind of year events happen every 6 months or 1 year, you gotta open your eyes and say, this is not this concern and need for action for climate is the same for Democrats and Republicans. So there's this shouldn't be a partisan issue. And having a solution where both parties can agree to is a way that we can find commonalities rather than find things to oppose each other on.
Yeah. And last question, Isuru, you came to the US as an international student, like me, by the way. But I guess you had the more cultural shock. Can you tell us a little bit about how it was for you to arrive from Sri Lanka to the US and go through education, first jobs, finding a path in the energy sector, and how did you survive and made it a success story?
Yeah, no, I think I came as a undergrad. I think you came as a grad student, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I think I guess I was maybe more of a culture shock. I think I tell people like it's easier to go from the east to the west, or maybe it is. At least it was for me because I'd watched the X Files and Friends growing up, but there's also a realization that like, oh, it's not, the real world is not what you see on TV. So so there is that, and obviously
I was watching Beverly Hills.
right. I mean, there's an adjustment time frame, and like I found solidarity with the international students. We were a strong force on campus. We did a lot of bunch of stuff together. We were united in our, we are not like the Americans kind of thing. Uh, and yeah, no, I was lucky enough to go to Amherst College. I got a scholarship, so that was what enabled me to come here.
Yeah.
And then I was again fortunate enough to get a job in New York in investments, where I guess my penchant for digging into the technical details made me the guy to get the energy job. So I looked at oil and gas to and I've been more recently I've been running my own business, looking at nuclear and renewables and batteries and all these things.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us all your knowledge and spreading knowledge and different viewpoints. And that's what we want to do on this podcast. And I wish you luck with your work transition. And I'm sure you'll do great.
Thank you. Thanks, Leslie.
That concludes our Energy Vista podcast, which was recorded on February 1st, 2019. Our theme music is provided by Music Screen, licensed under Creative Commons. This is Leslie Palti-Guzman saying good day and good luck.